I was scared to touch a cable. So many cables up under there. I basically would have my laptop open, looking at the ports while I'm unplugging the cable. I unplug the cable. I'm making sure the right port went down. So. Welcome to Debt Free in IT. I'm your host, Mike. This podcast is for anyone who's looking to get into the IT industry, whether it's for a career change or you're just interested. I think you come to the right place. When it comes to successful IT professionals, I believe they all have certain habits and skills in common. So today, I'm listening to the top 5 habits of every successful IT professional. So let's get to it. So the first habit that I see in most IT professionals is basically continuous learning. So this is basically that person that loves to learn, that person that loves to learn about new technologies. They're the ones that's going after new certifications. And basically that's something that's always needed in this field, because in this field, technology is always changing. So you need to have someone who's continuously learning the new technologies. And a lot of times you see where you may have one or two of these folks on your team. You may even have a whole team of these folks that love to learn, because some of us, I'm going to go ahead and say it, some of us, we get in that position and we get relaxed, where then, basically we may end up not really getting any projects that's going to move us to that next level, but basically we're just coasting. And there's nothing wrong with coasting. So it could be, you're almost close to retirement, or you may have something else going on. So there's nothing wrong with coasting, just getting the job done, going home, enjoying your life. So, but then, you come across those professionals that's, they're always learning something new. They're the ones that basically when they go home, they're still tinkering with whatever technology that's new, or maybe there's something that's about to be implemented in your infrastructure wherever you work at. So basically these professionals, they go home, they may have a environment up where they're still tinkering with whatever that technology is. So sometimes you often see that these professionals are the ones that implement new technologies or the most complex projects. So basically this type of professional, they love to learn. So anything new, they're always up on it. They're always letting the team know how this does and how this should be implemented. So the first habit of a lot of IT professionals that I see is continuous learners. They basically, they're lifelong learners. And the second habit I see within a lot of IT professionals is basically they get their hands-on practice. So basically this goes hand in hand with their continuous learning. So this is where they get their hands-on practice, where usually I've met some that have their home lab environments where basically they're able to practice, make changes, or configuring new types of technology that's going to be implemented in your infrastructure, or basically just labbing to get a better understanding. So you come across some of these folks, everyone in IT may not have a home lab, where you take me, for instance, I never had a physical lab. I used to go home and mess with bosun a lot. So I almost forgot the name. So I used to come home, mess with a lot of bosun and things like that. But usually the only time I was really messing with it and things like that is I'm studying towards a certification. I need to get something done. I need to get a certification or something like that. But these type of professionals that I'm talking about with the habit of getting hands-on practice, a lot of times you'll notice that they're using their home lab environment even when they're not studying for a certification. So, for instance, I once had a teammate where, basically this person, they was pretty good in their position. They was very good in their position. And basically I came up under them. So where basically, I'm asking them questions and things like that. So this person was so good in their position where I'm basically asking them like, man, how you learn all this stuff? I'm curious, I'm asking everything, sometimes I'm asking questions trying to see if I can stump that person. I never could. So, but basically I'm asking them one day, I sit there, ask them, say, hey, how you get so good at this? And basically they told me, when it came to that point of time where they needed to move up to the next level, they basically had a physical lab. They basically got a lot of equipment set up that home lab environment, and then basically that lab environment was a part of their routine, a part of their daily life where, okay, I would put in hours at work. Then once I come home, I'm putting in 4 or 5 more hours on this equipment. So I'm learning this equipment inside and out. I got all type of equipment here. I got networking equipment. I got security equipment. I got some servers here. So basically they had their own IT infrastructure, basically what you could say, basically in their home. So like I said, they could go in, practice all the time. It wasn't if they mess it up, they figure out how to fix it. So this is what I see a lot of pros stand out. So those that usually have these type of environments, these home lab environments. And then nowadays, this environment doesn't really have to be physical now. So you do have plenty of software and things out there now to make this environment to where it's less heavy on your pockets, if I may say, where basically now you have software that could implement everything within your IT infrastructure. So some of the popular pieces of software that I know of is basically CML. So, Cisco has a software called CML, Cisco Modeling Labs, where basically you can basically put your whole infrastructure or create your whole infrastructure within CML. And then also for a lot of networking folks, that's pretty helpful because if you put your physical environment and configure everything almost in this virtual environment, then any changes that need to be done, you can put it in this virtual environment first and see how it reacts. And if everything is copacetic, see that new word there. So if everything is copacetic, then basically we know that, okay, this is good. We can go ahead and make this change on the real equipment. So a lot of those professionals, I've noticed that they always had some type of lab and they always got hands-on practice. And the third habit of most successful IT professionals is basically they're pretty good at problem solving and they have confidence. So problem solving and confidence, where basically, like I said, any problems that arise, they're able to think through the problems. They're able to stay calm while solving problems. So this is something that every IT professional does not have. Trust me. This is something where I've seen IT professionals where, yeah, they may be calm when they're chilling and ain't nothing going on. But then when things start to break, a lot of times I would see them start to unravel, where they would basically, kind of go a little bit haywire. Couldn't really keep cool. It's very hard to do sometimes, depending on what's going on. So, but the type of IT professional that basically stays calm when everything is down, they're basically pretty good at thinking through problems, good at troubleshooting. So, like I said, I've seen many professionals that fit this category where a large issue come in, let's say they the one that pick up that phone call, instead of going haywire, going irate with whoever's on the phone, basically they're able to walk through that process and think through it logically. Where a lot of folks, I know for some folks, we always say, okay, we have troubleshooting steps. For me, a lot of times, if I'm calm when it happens, I like to kind of go by the OSI model. But like I always say, a lot of times everybody have a plan till you get punched in the face. So sometimes if I get punched in the face, then the OSI model goes out the window and I just start troubleshooting everywhere. Then you end up an hour in and you realize that if I use this OSI model, I would have found out I had a layer 2 issue, a data link layer issue. Then I would have been able to go ahead and quickly hone in on that issue and go ahead and resolve it. But everyone has their own set of ways that they love to troubleshoot. But these professionals here, they're able to keep calm, think through the troubleshooting process. And a lot of times I've seen where some of them are so good. And I got this one coworker in mind I'm thinking about on all of this. But I've seen some of them that was so good where basically when it came time for them to troubleshoot something, they was real good at proving it wasn't their issue. They was real good at proving that, it's not a networking issue, let's say. So a lot of times, most people, if you're in networking now, you probably already know that 9 times out of 10, most of your day is proven that it's not the network. A lot of folks seem like everything that breaks, first thing people call and say, hey, is the network down? Funny story, I once had someone call me before because Microsoft Office was given an error when they tried to open it up. And then the Microsoft Office had sent out an email. Well, Microsoft team, whoever their administrator had sent out an email that there was an Office issue. And this person still called and said, hey, are we having issues on the network? So like I said, so a lot of times within network, most of your paycheck gets earned just by proving that issues that go on is not the network. So like I said, but these type of people here, like I said, they're good at troubleshooting, real good at proving that it's not a networking issue. That way, you're not honed in the whole day because someone else saying it's a networking issue. You're not sitting there the whole day thinking that it's your issue, troubleshooting everything under the sun, only to find out that, oh, this other team had made this change and it was something that they did that was causing issues that look like it might have been something on the network. Like I said, this type of professional, like I said, they're basically good at problem solving, and also they have a lot of confidence. So that confidence basically comes in where, this person, they aren't afraid to make changes. They go with whatever their first instinct is. This is something that I think grows as you start to get more experience within a certain department or within a certain field. So, for me, I started gaining confidence, when I was in operations. A couple months after doing operations, then, I started gaining that confidence to where, okay, I was pretty confident at what I was doing. If I needed to make a change on something, if I needed to do something, I didn't hesitate. And then when I went to help desk, I had to start all over because I'm in a new territory now. Same thing with desktop, same thing with networking. After a couple months of working, you usually start to get more confident in your decisions to where, now you have something to do, you need to make a change. There's no hesitation where before, man, I remember when I first started networking, going down in the data center, looking at ports and things like that, I was scared to touch a cable. So many cables up under there. I basically would have my laptop open looking at the ports while I'm unplugging the cable. I unplug the cable, I'm making sure the right port went down. So, but like I said, as I started getting going, you start to get more confident with things. Quick pause. I'd like to introduce you to the Log Files. Log Files is a weekly newsletter to help you start your IT career with practical advice and tips powered by yours truly. I launched it in the beginning of the year. It's packed with actionable advice, resources, and insights to kickstart your IT journey. The link is in the description as well as pinned in the comments. So don't miss out. Now back to the episode. So the next habit that I find in a lot of IT professionals is basically they don't mind teaching and also they don't mind sharing. So usually these type of professionals, they don't do what we like to call gatekeeping, where basically, someone basically learns one technology and basically they don't want to let nobody else know how to work that technology, or they don't want nobody else to do it because they may feel like in the long run, this could possibly mean that this other person could take over and do their job. So you have a lot of that within the industry too. So you will come across some of that. But the type of professional I'm talking about, like I said, they don't mind sharing and also they don't mind helping you out. So a lot of times this professional, like I said, they don't mind helping out other teammates to understand how things work. I often think about, like I said, when I came to a lot of my positions, there was always someone standing in this role that I'm speaking of, to where basically they was the ones that would help me out, would basically show me how things work. Basically, if it's something I didn't understand, they would show me how it's done or break it down to where it was understandable for me. So a lot of times, like I said, these folks here, like I said, I owe them a lot because I talk about them a lot, because they was some of the ones that was there for me when I was coming up. Then also these type of folks where they're working on issues, they don't mind telling you to tag along. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times, some folks I know coming up, you might not want to ask stuff like that. Hey, can I go along with you or something like that? But, a lot of times these folks will offer. They knew that you was new in a certain position, and basically they didn't mind sharing their knowledge with you. Where if they're going to fix an issue, they might be like, hey, you got anything going on? If you ain't got nothing going on, basically they'll offer you to tag along with them. That way you just shoulder surf per se, or shadow is what we call it sometimes. Shoulder surf and just see how they resolve this issue. Take your notes, because 9 times out of 10, you will eventually see that same issue. So, but these type of IT professionals, like I said, they're very good at sharing and also just passing down that knowledge. And most of them, they don't say it, but they do have a no question is a dumb question rule. Because you best believe in my day, I've asked some dumb questions, especially if it's something I ain't never did before. I'm going to ask you some dumb questions. So you best believe you're going to get a dumb question. But with these IT professionals, no question is a dumb question. So they pretty much, like I said, they're a good coworker, good to work with. Like I said, they're able to pass down knowledge. So because I think that's the whole game there, where you always want to get on a team somewhere where you have folks that don't mind passing down that knowledge, because a lot of times, you can study all the book work you want to. Once you get out there in the real field, it's much different from what the books say. Now understanding the foundations, the fundamentals, things like that. Oh yes, the book gonna be spot on with that. But where that experience come in, where you're working with someone who's been in that position 10, 15 years, they know how to take those fundamentals and apply it to their industry, apply it to the infrastructure at your current enterprise. So they know how to do things like that. So that's where their knowledge is invaluable, because like I said, if you got someone that could pass it down to you, basically it makes your job easier, because like I said, they already done went through it and they share it with you. So like I said, my fourth habit for most successful IT professionals is they don't mind teaching and sharing knowledge. My fifth and final habit of most successful IT professionals is basically they have deep expertise in one area. So used to, most people may say, oh, you don't want to put yourself in a rabbit hole where you only know one thing. But nowadays, a lot of times we aim to niche down to where, you don't want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. So a jack of all trades, that's someone that knows how to do a little bit of everything, but they're not specialized in nothing. So those folks, you see them around the industry. There's nothing wrong with being a jack of all trades. A lot of times I see this happen when those people that transfer, where they may have had their own computer business and then they start going to a corporate office and working. A lot of times in that computer business, they was the one doing everything. So, they're a jack of all trades, but they may not be a master of none of them. So they just know how to place Band-Aids on it per se, to get things working. So when they make that transition to corporate, it's a little bit harder for them, because they got to go by some rules now. They can't actually go out and do everything. If they're in a desktop position, they can't go out and do a security job, things like that from working in their enterprise. So most of the time, like I said, with these folks here, they got that deep expertise in one area, to where, let's say you got someone who's been in networking for 10 years. Let's say they haven't really had any other positions. They may have been one of the ones that got lucky, went to school for networking, came out of school, got a job in networking, and just been moving up their network ladder for 10 years. So this person, like I said, they're going to be real good at networking. So like I said, this experience is different from having 10 years of network experience, is real different from having 10 years of general IT experience, to where you done went to different positions. Like when I pick on myself, for instance, I done had about 4 or 5 different positions within the industry. So all my experience wraps up to roughly a little bit over 10 years or so of IT experience. But then you take someone that has those same years of experience, but only in one category. So let's say networking. So they've been in networking 10 years. So this person, they're going to know a whole lot about networking, a whole lot you may not even know or may not even seen yet. So a lot of times this person usually is going to be, probably by the time you get in networking, going to be at the top of the hill, top of the line, senior engineer, or whatever the highest role you may have. But like I said, these folks, where they have a lot of their knowledge just within that networking realm. So I oftentimes find a lot of IT professionals to where they have that specialization, and that specialization makes you more valuable in my eyes, because if someone specializes in networking, it ain't gonna be nothing for them to go out to another enterprise if they're looking for more money and land another networking role. If someone specializes in security, once they get their experience up, let's say they got 5, 6 years in one location, it's easier for them to move to another position and still continue to move up that security ladder. So a lot of times when it comes to that deep expertise in one area, in my eyes, it's always good to be valuable in one thing, be a master of one thing, than to be a jack of all trades in my eyes, especially when it comes to the IT industry. So, you have your other, I think, like other points around that industry that you may need to know. If you're in security, then of course you may need to know a little bit of Linux, a little bit of Python, things like that. But in general, you're still a master in security. That was my last habit of most successful IT professionals. They mostly have deep expertise in one area. So that brings me to the end of this episode. Hopefully you found some value in this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, you can follow me at DebtFreeinIT. If you have any questions, you can email me at debtfreeinit@gmail.com, or you can visit me at debtfreeinitwithmike.com. Other than that, I'll see you next week. Peace.